Again, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for being here. And as always, it's truly a pleasure and honor to speak with you here today. I wanted to share a little bit about some life experiences that I've had actually in the past week and a half or so. I think a lot of you know that last week I was back in Oregon, and I was attending a friend's, they now call it celebration of life ceremony, funeral, for lack of a better word. I think I mentioned last time my friend was 28 years old and she transitioned. She would have been 29 last week, ironically. So yeah, very, very surreal situation. But anyway, coming back, I'm in the airport and I was in one of these gift shops. And I happened to see one of the magazines there, just, on the magazine rack. And it happened to be the Harvard Review. I don't know why I always say the Harvard. How do you say that? Harvard. I always want to enunciate that. I don't know, Harvard. But anyway, it happened to be the Harvard Review. And it had this very interesting title on it. It said, "How do you thrive in an ever-changing world?" And when I read that title, something very surreal happened to me, kind of an epiphany, I guess, or the light bulb moment, or a bolt of lightning hit me, something like that. That while I was in Oregon, not only did I get to experience my friend's celebration of life ceremony, but I caught up with two former student athletes of mine. They're no longer students, they're grown young women now, mid-late 20s. And one had just had a baby boy, and another one had just gotten married. This was all this past week when I was in Oregon. And so I thought, wow, how surreal is that within 1 week, you're going through three very distinct stages of life: a birth, a transition, and a marriage. And so as I read that article, or the title anyway, "How do you thrive in an ever-changing world?" all of that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And so for today, that's what I actually wanted to speak with you about. How do you thrive in an ever-changing world? The one thing that all three of those events had in common was this notion of change. And so again, for today, I wanted to address this topic. How do you thrive in an ever-changing world? The one thing that we know for certain with absolute guarantee is that change will happen. Change will happen whether we are ready for it or not. Change will happen whether we like it or not. And perhaps most importantly, change is going to happen regardless of whether we want it to or not. Then the question then becomes, looking at change, well, why does change occur? Why does all these crazy things happen? To begin answering that question, I wanted to turn to some of our masters, teachers throughout history, and experts in this subject matter. And the first one, of course, is our founder and philosopher, Ernest Holmes. And this is what he has to say about why change occurs. "Nature will not let us stay in any one place for too long. She will let us stay just long enough to gather the experience necessary to the unfolding and advancement of the soul. This is a wise provision, for should we stay there too long, we would become too set, too rigid, and too inflexible. Nature demands change in order that we may advance." I like that. That makes sense. Another great thinker in history, Albert Einstein, says this about why change occurs. "Change is the measure of intelligence, and the measure of intelligence is the ability to change." Interesting. I did a little more research and found a few more quotations. This one is from Winston Churchill. "To improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often." Now, if that's actually true, to be perfect is to change often, I must be perfect because I am changing all the time. And I think all of us must be perfect because we are all changing all the time. And then this was a particularly favorite one of mine that I found. This is a traditional Native American philosophy and saying with regards to why change occurs. "The journey between who you once were and who you are now becoming is where the dance of life really takes place." Between who you are and who you are becoming is where the real dance of life takes place. So these are just a few quotations I found about why change occurs. And of course, having done more research, there are many, many more. But it seems that the basic idea behind all of these quotations and the basic idea behind change is the central idea of growth. So just as the tree grows, just as the flower grows, just as the child grows, so too must the spirit grow. And so that is why change occurs, not so you can stay who you are, but so you can become who you are meant to be. Remember that point and consider that point carefully. Your spirit is always guiding you to the next biggest and highest version of yourself. Your spirit is always guiding you to the next biggest and highest version of yourself. And that can only occur through change and through growth. And change is growth, and growth is change. And so now that we understand better why change occurs, and we know that change is inevitable, let's look then at not only how you can survive change, but how can you begin to thrive in an ever-changing world? And to begin answering that, let's first examine some common changes that are occurring for anyone, anytime, any place, anywhere in the world. First and foremost, going on in the world right now, war and displacement. We can refer to this as immediate and drastic change. Now, I've never experienced such immediate and drastic change, so I can't even pretend to imagine what that is like. But for several million people right now, that is their reality. Another type of change that I mentioned earlier that I experienced in Oregon last week, all within a 3-day time period, birth, marriage, and transition. All simultaneously going on, literally all at the same time, as one is departing, one is entering. Other types of change, illness, medical issues, health-related issues for yourself, for a family member, for a loved one. Another friend of a friend this past week, 56 years old, was just diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. 56 years old. He and his wife are now going to embark on what they're calling their farewell tour. A year ago, this was nowhere even close to being on their radar, on their agenda. That's what change is. Other types of change, relocation, a new state or a new country, a new job, retirement, or perhaps loss of a job. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, divorce, separation, traffic accident, traffic jam. How many of you here, show of hands, have experienced at least one of those changes in your life? Oh, everybody's hand went up. Okay. Other types of change, parties, birthdays, and celebrations. And so the list goes on and on and on. And so this is only a small type of the amount of changes that I've given here, just a few examples of the type of changes that we can experience in our life. However, someone somewhere in the world is experiencing one form of change along these lines, somewhere, somehow. Again, the question becomes, how do we thrive with all of this change? How do we thrive in some of this? How do we thrive in any of this? How do we thrive in all of this? To begin answering these questions, again, I turn to the experts, starting with Ernest Holmes. This is what Ernest Holmes says about how to deal with change and how to begin thriving in change. We have within us a power that is greater than anything we shall ever contact in the outer. A power that can overcome every obstacle in our life and set us safe, set us satisfied, and at peace, healed and prosperous in a new light and in a new life. So how do we thrive in an ever-changing world? As Ernest Holmes just said, we use God. We use the inner spirit, the inner light. That spirit, that source, that power that is available to us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available to us when we are sleeping, available to us when we are awake. Again, how do we thrive? By turning inward and trusting that inner voice that guides you, that tells you what to do, where to go, when to do it, And if you're really paying attention, even how to do it. The question is never, is this inner voice there? Is this inner voice speaking to me? It is. It is always speaking to you. The question is, are you listening? Are you listening to the inner voice? And when change occurs, either gradual change, subtle change, or massive and dramatic change, as we're seeing in Ukraine right now, what is your inner voice telling you? More research, I came across an African proverb that stated this with regards to thriving in the midst of change. If there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. Think about that for a moment. If there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. So in order to thrive in an ever-changing world, you must first be at peace with yourself and who you are. Are you at peace with who you are? Do you know who you are? You must first love yourself and who you are. You must first lead yourself. You must lead yourself where you are going. So do you love yourself? And are you leading yourself? Gandhi once told us to be the change you wish to see in the world. Jesus very distinctly told us, ye are the light of the world. If you wish to thrive in an ever-changing world, be the change, be the light, not to someone else first. Be the light, be the change to yourself first. First love thyself and then another. First be the change to yourself, then another. That's how you be the change to others, is to first be the change to yourself. To thrive, are you being the change to yourself? Are you being that light of the world to yourself first? Learn to love yourself. Treat yourself with respect and appreciate yourself first, and then to others. And then to others, you can be the change and be the light. And in this case, the African proverb holds true. If there's no enemy within, there can be no enemy on the outside to do us harm, because we're at peace with who we are and what we are being. Because darkness, hate, anger, greed, frustration that you will undoubtedly encounter along your journey called life cannot penetrate the light that you are. Be the light that you are, starting to yourself first. And of course, doing the research, I had to research a little bit of my very ancient ancestral roots, the Vikings. Now, here's what the Vikings say about change and how to thrive in an ever-changing world. You're hurt right now because the old you is falling apart. To allow the new you to shine forth. That's my ancestors, the Vikings. I was pretty proud of that when I read that. I thought I was going to read something about plundering and pillaging. But I read that. I told myself, I have to use that today. You're hurt right now because the old you is falling apart, to allow the new you to shine stronger. Out of everything I have said today about thriving during change, and this is not because I have Viking ancestry that I say this humbly, but this final proverb is perhaps the most important, because I can sum up what this proverb means in one simple word: acceptance. And I'm not talking about accepting what is going on in your outside world. The divorce, the bankruptcy, certainly that is part of it. But what I am talking about is something bigger, something stronger, something more powerful. I'm talking about the acceptance of who you are and who you are becoming. Because remember, it is who you are becoming that is the person you were meant to be. And that is how you thrive in an ever-changing world, by accepting who you are and what your role is on this planet. You are not put here accidentally. You have a specific reason, a specific gift, and a specific purpose. And it's accepting of that gift that you are, of that purpose that you are, of that reason for you being here is how you begin to thrive. We know that change will occur. Now can you begin to thrive in an ever-changing environment because it's leading you to where you were meant to be. And where you were meant to go is to become the person you were meant to be. And when you understand that simple philosophy, again, I have to give credit to my Viking ancestors. Not that I'm being biased, maybe a little. That is how you thrive in an ever-changing world. So everything that is happening in your life, past, present, future, today, tomorrow, next week, next year, next 5 years from now, again, is designed for one reason and one reason only, to mold you into becoming the person that you were meant to be. And when you fully embrace and accept the becomingness, again, the becomingness, not the doingness, you're not a human doing. Remember, you're a human being. When you fully embrace and accept the becomingness of who you were meant to be on your journey, then you will truly understand at a level that very few can grasp on this planet of what it means to actually thrive in a world that is ever changing. But then not only will you fully grasp what it means to be the change, to be the light, for what you see in yourself, and this is the real secret, you will then begin to see in others. For when you accept and embrace the change that you are becoming, when you accept and embrace the light that you are, the change that you are, you will accept and embrace this in others. And so perhaps, maybe the real secret to thriving is when we learn to not only embrace ourselves and accept ourselves for who are we becoming, but when we learn to embrace and accept others for who and what they are becoming. Ernest Holmes summarizes very beautifully with this last quotation. Trust in your own self more than in all else. Trust in yourself more than in all else. And that is how you learn to thrive in an ever-changing world. And so it is.